Hello everyone, welcome to Math 0028. This is the Unit 1 practice test. So we've got about 25 questions to get through. Number 1 says, is 2 a solution of 10 minus 3n equals 2? So what you're doing there is you're going to take the 2 and you're going to plug it in everywhere there's a variable. So you're going to have 10 minus 3 times 2 equals 2, because you're plugging in that value. So we're going to multiply first on the left. That would be 10 minus 6 equals 2. Well, on the left we get 4, and on the right we have 2. So that's what you're checking to see, is to see if you get the same number on both sides, which we don't. So the answer is no. It's not a solution. Number 2. We have an equation to solve. So if we want to get the x by itself, we need to get rid of the 3. Since it's positive, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So negative 11 and negative 3 gives you negative 14. The equal sign comes down, the 3's cancel, and your x comes down. So you're done. Number 3. When we try and get the z by itself, that means we have to get rid of that fraction, negative 7/8. And when the fraction's right beside the variable, that's when you need to use the reciprocal of that fraction and multiply by that on both sides. So the reciprocal of negative 7/8 would be negative 8 over 7. And you're going to multiply by that on both sides. So we're going to have negative 8 over 7. And you can put 21 over 1. So on the left-hand side, first of all, a negative times a negative gives me a positive, and then everything cancels out to 1s. The 7s cancel with each other, so do the 8s, and we just get a positive z, which is what we want. On the other side, figure out your sign first. What's a negative times a positive? That's going to give you a negative. And then you can cancel by 7. 7 will go into 7 once, and 7 goes into 21 3 times. So we have negative 8 times 3 gives you negative 24. On number 4, on this other equation to solve, the first thing we need to do is get the 9a by itself. So I need to get rid of the 8. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides, and that's going to cancel on the left. So negative 9a comes down, and it equals negative 2. Then divide by negative 9 on both sides. So the negative 9's cancel. Now over here you have a negative 2 over a negative 9. Remember, whenever you have a fraction, if the numerator and denominator are both negative, you have to simplify that to be a positive. So you're going to end up with positive 2/9. Okay, number 5. So the equations are going to start getting a little bit longer. The difference here, we have variables on both sides of the equal sign. So the first step, I want to get the variables on the left so that I can, go from there. So I'm going to cancel. I want to subtract the 4x. I want to get rid of that 4x term. So I'm going to subtract that from both sides. 15 minus 4 gives me 11x minus 2 equals negative 13, because the 4x is canceled. Now you need to get rid of the negative 2. So when you move your variables to the left, then you move the constants back to the right. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So 11x comes down, and it equals negative 11. And then divide by 11 to get the x by itself. So those 11's cancel, and we get x equals negative 1. Nice problem. Okay, number 6. On this one, we've got some parentheses that we need to get rid of. So we're going to start, and we're not going to mess with the 12x at all. That is just going to come down. But we're going to distribute the negative 2 through the parentheses. So that's going to be negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x. Negative 2 times negative 8 is positive 16 equals 28. Now, if you look on the left-hand side of the equal sign, you have like terms here, 12x minus 8x. You just combine those. That would be 4x plus 16 equals 28. Now we need to get rid of the 16. So you subtract it from both sides, and 4x comes down, and it's going to equal, what the heck is that? 12. Okay? And now divide by 4 on both sides. So we get x, because the 4's cancel, equals 3. Another nice problem. Not too bad at all. Okay, number 7. Now the biggest mistake people make on this one is they try and distribute the 7a through the parentheses. That's not correct because the 7a is not right beside the parentheses. What is right outside there is a negative sign or a minus sign. And you want to remember that's just like having a 1 in front of those parentheses. So you're going to bring down 7a and you're going to distribute a negative 1 through the parentheses. So negative 1 times 3a is going to be negative 3a, and then you have negative 1 times negative 7 gives you a positive 7 equals 11. Okay, so we have 7a minus 3a. They're on the same side, so combine them. That would be 4a plus 7 equals 11. Okay, now we're going to get rid of the 7, so subtract 7 from both sides. So 4a comes down, and 11 minus 7 gives me 4. And the last step, divide by 4, so I get a equals 1. On we go. Number 8. Wow, they just keep getting longer. So in this one we've got brackets and parentheses, and what you want to do is start with the innermost grouping symbol, which on the left side is going to be the 2 with the 2x minus 3, and you want to work your way out. The biggest mistake people make is oh, 7 plus 3 right off the bat. Wrong from the very beginning. You're going to bring down the 7 and the 3 and the 1. And all we're doing on the left is distributing the 2. So that's going to be plus 4x, 2 times 2, and then 2 times negative 3 would be negative 6. Now notice my parentheses are gone, but the brackets are still there. And then distribute the 6 on the right hand side would give you 6x plus 42. Okay, now back on the left, we're still bringing down the 7 and the 3. At this point you can go two different ways. You could distribute the 3 through the brackets to all three terms. That would work. Or I think it's easier to combine and then distribute. So I'm going to combine the 1 and the negative 6 here. Those are like terms in the brackets. So 1 minus 6 is negative 5 plus the 4x comes down. That just, that term just comes down. Equals 6x plus 42. Okay, so now I can distribute the 3. Okay, so bring down the 7. You still do not add 7 and 3 because the 3 is going to get distributed to those two terms. So 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, and 3 times 4x would be positive 12x equals 6x plus 42. Okay, finally our grouping symbols are gone. Now we have like terms over here on the left hand side. 7 minus 15 is negative 8 plus 12x equals 6x plus 42. And now I can start moving variables to the left and constants to the right. So I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. And so I have negative 8 comes down. Now 12 minus 6 would be positive 6x. And then over here the 6x's cancel and we just have 42. Now get rid of the constant. So I'm going to add 8 and add 8. So the 8's cancel and 6x equals 50. You'd think after all this work they could at least give you a nice answer. But no, okay, of course not. Why would we do that? All right, so divide by 6 on both sides, and the 6's cancel, and what you have here is 50 over 6. You don't want to divide that out into a decimal because it does not come out nice. It repeats and it just is a mess. But what you need to do is 2 goes into both the numerator and denominator, so you need to reduce that improper fraction to 25 over 3 by dividing both the top and bottom by 2. Okay, number 9, we have fractions. So we're going to start by getting rid of the fractions. Look at 3, 6, and 2. Your common denominator there would be 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 6 over 1, and we're going to multiply it by every term. Just bring that minus sign down, let it hang out there in the middle. 6 over 1 times 5 over 6, and 6 over 1 times negative 1/2. Okay, so on the first set of fractions, we can cancel by 3. 3 goes into 6 2 times, so I have 2 times 2 would be 4x. Okay, bring down the minus sign. Here, the 6's cancel out to 1, so 1 times 5 is just 5, equals, here I can cancel by 2, and that's going to leave 3. Now be careful, 3 times negative 1 is going to be negative 3. So be careful there. So now, much easier to solve. The next step, we need to get rid of the 5. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So 4x comes down, and negative 3 plus 5 is 2. Don't fall into the trap. Everybody goes, that's 2, which is wrong. You're dividing by 4 to get rid of the coefficient there by the x. And 2/4 is a fraction that when you reduce by 2 is going to give you 1/2. And that's your correct answer. All right, let's look at this next one. So we only have one denominator, just 4. So that's going to be our common denominator, would be 4. So we're going to put 4 over 1 times 3/4 x. Now this is where everybody messes up. They just bring down minus 1 equals 8. That's wrong. You've got to put 4 over 1 times 1 over 1, and I just left that minus sign hanging out there in the middle, and then equals 4 over 1, and write 8 as a fraction, 8 over 1. Okay, so every single term has to get multiplied by the common denominator. Very important. So on the first set of fractions, the 4's are going to cancel to just 1. So 1 times 3 is going to be 3x. Bring down your minus sign. 4 times 1 is just 4, equals 4 times 8. Those are both on top, both in the numerator. So you multiply and get 32. Much nicer. Now we're going to add the 4 to both sides. So 3x comes down, and it equals 36. Then divide by 3 on both sides. So x equals 12. Not too bad. On we go. Oh my gosh. Who writes this crap, right? Okay, number 11. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. We could just skip it, but we're not gonna because we're brave, right? Right. I can hear you going like chickens. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to find the common denominator of 5 and 3 because those are my two denominators, and that would be 15. I have a feeling that I may run out of room on this problem. We will see. So what you have to see is that on the left, you're going to put, I'm going to squish it up here so that I have enough room. I'm going to put 15 over 1, and it's going to get multiplied by that whole first term, the 1/5, 25 minus 10b. Okay, then plus, I'm going to put 15 over 1 times 5 over 1. It's going to be messy. 15 over 1 times the 1/3, 9b minus 30. And I'm going to put the 5 first just because I've got more room, times 15 over 1. Okay, I hope this makes sense because I know it's a mess. What's going to happen is before you even get to the parentheses on the left and on the right, actually, you're going to cancel the fraction. So the 5 goes into 5 once and 5 goes into 15 3 times. So what you have is 3 times 1 on top would be 3 times, still in parentheses, 25 minus 10b. Okay, so I know it looks kind of weird, but it's much easier to distribute 3 than it is 1/5. Now, plus This next term here, we have 15 times 5 is 75. And then we had our equal sign. And here we have the 15 times 1/3. So that's where you cancel by 3. That's going to leave 5. So I have 5 times 1 is 5 times 9b minus 30. And then minus 5 times 15 is 75. So I know the numbers are kind of large, and when we start to distribute, they're going to get big also. So don't be afraid. Do not be afraid, grasshopper. I will teach you well. So you have to make sure you have a calculator, okay? Because in fact, I was almost going to start this section without a calculator and ran and got it before I started. So 3 times, now we're going to distribute. 3 times 25 is 75, minus 3 times 10 would be 30b, plus 75, that comes down, and then we're going to distribute the 5 over here. So I've got 45b, and 5 times 1 by, gosh, I can't talk, 5 times 30 would be minus 150 minus 75. Okay, so now all the parentheses are gone. Now we combine like terms. On the left, I have 75 plus 75 is 150 minus 30b. Okay. On the right hand side, 45b comes down, and these two constants are both negative, so we add and keep the sign, and that's going to be negative 225. Okay. Now, next step, you want to move your variables to the left. Okay, to the left, to the left. So I'm going to subtract 45b, and I have 150 comes down, minus 75b, because you have to add there, equals a negative 225. Okay, so it's getting there. Now get rid of the constant on the left. Get rid of the 150, so subtract 150 from both sides, minus 150. And I have negative 75b comes down equals negative 375. And divide by negative 75 on both sides. And I think after all this mess, it actually comes out nice to just 5. Yep, positive 5. Now, do we want to check it? Heck no! That's disgusting, okay? Say a prayer, move on. On we go to number 12. Okay, 12 and 13 are literal equations where you have to solve for a specific variable. So on number 12, we want to get the x all by itself. So the first thing we have to do is get rid of the 3y term. So I'm going to, since it's addition, I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides. So 4x is going to come down. Those 3y's are gone. And on the other side, these are not like terms. You can't subtract 12 minus 3y and get 9. So you just write them side by side. 12 minus 3y. Now, is the x by itself? No. So I have to divide by 4, since that's multiplication. Use division. And then just put this whole other side over 4. And so we get x equals 12 minus 3y all over 4. And you can leave it just like that. Don't try and do anything fancy. Just leave it as a fraction. No big deal. Okay? Number 13, we're trying to get b all by itself. So look, on the same side of the equal sign with the b is the h. The operation there is multiplication. So to get rid of the h, I have to use division. So I'm going to divide by h, and I also have to divide by h on the other side. So the h's cancel, and I get b on the right equals a over h. Make sure that when you are putting your answers into WebAssign that you use the correct case of letter. It's very case sensitive, so you have to have a capital A, lowercase h, lowercase b. Okay? Number 14 and 15, these are proportions. Okay? So the way you solve proportions is to cross multiply. So on this first one, I'm going to have 8 times n, that's 8n, equals 3 times 12 on the other side is going to be 36. Okay? And now you have to divide by 8 on both sides. And so the 8's cancel, and n equals, I think it's 4.5. Yes, it is. 4.5. So you can just leave it as a decimal there. Number 15. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to cross multiply. Now, you want to be careful when you write the 5. When it's going to get multiplied by x minus 4, you have to keep that x minus 4 in parentheses. And then it's going to equal 7 times 2 is 14. So I just usually put the term that has the variable in it on the left-hand side, just out of habit, okay? But the order doesn't matter what side you put it on. So now our next step is to distribute the 5. So that's going to give you 5x minus 20 equals 14. And now we need to add 20, get rid of that 20. So 5x comes down, the 20s are gone, and it equals 34. Ugh, this is going to be icky. So divide by 5 on both sides, and you just end up with an improper fraction. So 34 over 5, and that's your answer. Okay? Number 16. We have a couple word problems coming up now. It says an account executive bought a new car and drove 29,000 miles in the first 4 months. At the same rate, how many miles will the account executive drive in 3 years? So what we have in the first sentence is we have miles to months. That's what I want to set up. Okay? So he drove 29,000 miles in 4 months. Okay? And you're going to set up a proportion, because anytime you see at the same rate or at this rate, that tells you set up a proportion. So it says how many miles. We're looking for the miles, which is on top. That's going to be X. Will the account executive drive in 3 years? Now, there's the tricky part. 3 years, that is not in terms of months. So you have to take the 3 and multiply it by 12, because there's 12 months in a year. So what we're going to put in on the bottom is 36, because there'd be 36 months in 3 years. Now we can cross multiply. Okay? So we have 4x equals some ridiculously large number. So 29, what is that, 1,000 times 36 gives you 1,044,000. Okay, so that's 1,044,000. And now divide by 4 on both sides. So those cancel. And 1,044,000 divided by 4 equals 261,000. And if you want to be really fancy, you would write out miles. So I hope that's a good car, because that's a lot of miles in 3 years. All right. Number 17. A pre-election survey showed that 2 out of every 3 eligible voters would cast ballots in the county election. There are 240,000 eligible voters in the county. How many people are expected to vote in the election? So we've got 2. Oh gosh. Grab the stupid phone. All right, we've got 2 people. What they're showing you at first is 2 that are expected to vote, okay, that actually voted, out of 3 that are eligible, okay. So they're expecting 2 to vote out of every 3 that are eligible. Now, it says there are 240,000 eligible voters in the county. How many people do they think are going to actually vote? So the 240,000, that's going to go on the bottom, because that's how many eligible voters there are, and we want to know how many are going to actually go in and vote. Okay? So, we cross multiply. We have 3x equals, when you multiply 2 times 240,000, you get 480,000. And then you have to divide by 3 on both sides. So we get x equals 160,000 people. And that's who they would expect 160,000 people to vote. Okay? Number 18, translate into an equation and solve for x. And it says the sum of the sum of 9 and a number x is 4. Okay, so your key word here is sum. And then here is, which is your equal sign. So remember, sum is addition, so we want the addition of 9 and a number x. So he would have 9 plus x is equals 4. Okay, so that's your equation. Now we have to solve it. So we're going to subtract 9 from both sides, and those 9's are gone. So x equals -5. So if you're taking the test online, you will basically just be putting in the answer, -5. But they may also have a place for you to put in your equation. So make sure that you can do both so that way you get all the full credit. Number 19, translate into an equation and solve for x. The difference between 6 and twice a number x is 4. So we are talking about difference, and here's twice, and here's is. Okay, so the difference is our main operation. That's subtraction. Okay, and we want the subtraction between 6 and twice a number. So the 6 is going to go on the left side of the minus sign, and then over here on the other side we need to write twice a number. Twice means 2 times, so 2 times x, twice a number, and then is equals 4. So there's your equation, 6 minus 2x equals 4. Now, to solve it, you're going to subtract 6 from both sides, so those are gone, and -2x comes down equals 4 minus 6 would be -2. Then divide by -2 on both sides, and so x equals +1. All right, number 20. Find 3 consecutive even integers whose sum is -18. Okay, so first of all, we want 3 consecutive even integers. So we don't know the first one. That's going to be x. I apologize for the phone. Oh my gosh. All right, the second integer is, since we want even, it's going to be x plus 2, because that's the difference between any even integers is just 2. Now, the third one is going to be x plus 4. So there's our 3 even integers. Now, it says their sum is -18. So we're going to add these integers together. X, that's the first one, plus x plus 2 plus x plus 4 is going to equal -18. So you have -18. Most people forget the negative. They just read right over that word, so be careful. All right, so our first step to solving is to combine like terms. So I've got x plus x plus x. They're all on the same side. That's going to be 3x. And then 2 plus 4 gives me 6 equals -18. Now we subtract the 6 from both sides. So 3x comes down, and -18 and -6 would be -24. And then divide by 3, so we have x equals -8. Now, that's x. This is where so many people mess up, because they go, oh, -8, -10, -12. Totally wrong, okay? Look back over here to your expressions for first, second, and third. If x is -8, that's our first answer, -8. To find the second one, you have to plug it in. -8 plus 2 would be -6. So there's the second answer. And then the last one, the third answer, you do -8, because that's x, plus 4 would be -4. So there's your 3 answers, -8, -6, and -4. And if you add them up, they give you, their sum is -18. So it works. Pretty cool. All right, number 21. Write the set in interval notation. I don't know about you, but I like to see it on a graph first. I think that's easier to see what the interval is. So less than or equal to 2. Here is 2. Less than or equal to goes to the left forever and ever. And because of the less than or equal to sign, it's going to have a bracket at 2. So if you start at the left end of this interval, it goes all the way out to negative infinity, and it comes up to 2. That's our other endpoint with the bracket that comes right off of the graph there. Okay? Number 22. Graph the following on a real number line. Because God forbid, we don't want you to put it on a fake number line. So make sure it's a real number line, not a fake one. Okay? So here we have negative 1. So x is greater than negative 1, which means we're going to shade to the right. Now, negative 1 is not greater than negative 1. So to show that it's just greater than with no equal to, remember, oh, that is a terrible parentheses, but you use a parentheses there, not a bracket. All right? Number 23. So we have to solve the inequality, and I'm pretty sure they have you write the answer in interval notation. So we'll make sure we write out the interval answer. So here to solve for x, we need to divide by 2 on both sides. So the 2's cancel, and we get x is less than or equal to 2, because 4 divided by 2. Now, if we want to look at that on a number line, here's 2. So x is less than or equal to that, so we're going to shade to the left. And then because of the equal to sign, it's going to be a bracket. So remember, it's the interval starting way back here at negative infinity, comes up to 2 with a bracket. So that would be your interval notation. All right, number 24. We're going to start by getting our variables on the same side of the equal sign. So I'm going to add, same side of the inequality sign. Sorry, it's not an equal sign. I'm going to add 5x to both sides. So 5 plus 5 gives me 10x minus 6 is greater than or equal to 14. And now I'm going to move my constant, so I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So 10x comes down, and it's greater than or equal to 20. And then divide by 10 on both sides. So x is greater than or equal to 2. All right, so think about the number line. Here's 2. So greater than or equal to is going to be to the right forever and ever. And you're going to have a bracket at 2. So the interval starts at 2 with a bracket, and going out to the right forever and ever goes out to positive infinity. All right. Number 25. This is the last one. Woohoo! Okay, so we're going to start, and we're going to distribute negative 5, and we're going to distribute the 4, and everything else is just coming down. So we're going to have 2, and then distribute negative 5. We're going to get negative 5x, and negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Is greater than or equal to, distribute the 4, we get 4x minus 4 minus 8. Okay, so on the left-hand side we have like terms. 2 minus 5, you just combine those. That's going to be negative 3 minus 5x is greater than or equal to, bring down the 4x, and then here you've got like terms, negative 4 minus 8. Since they're both negative, you add and keep the sign, which gives you negative 12. Now I'm going to start moving my variables to the left. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So negative 3 comes down, and negative 5 and negative 4 is negative 9x is greater than or equal to negative 12. Now move the variable, not the variables, move the constants to the right. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and the 3's cancel, and I have negative 9x is greater than or equal to negative 9. And divide by negative 9 so that we get that x by itself. Now remember, this is the one exception to the rule with inequalities. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality sign. So that sign is going to flip and become less than or equal to, and negative 9 divided by negative 9 is just 1. So if we look at the number line for that, here's 1. Less than or equal to is going to go to the left forever and ever, and you're going to have a bracket at 1. So that interval starts back here at negative infinity, comes up to 1 with a bracket. Alright, that is it for practice test 1. Good luck on your test. You can do it.